Hello everyone! Newbie Drone has released a new 1S connector for their batteries that they will be launching, which does have some PH20 similarities as well as compatibility. But they have redesigned for higher performance, and they produced some marketing materials that they sent along with these. As you can see, it's going to have more metal contact, which is not surprising. That's what we've been seeing. And they also have a chart that has, different features and resistance and voltages and measurements that they have. Things that I can't necessarily verify, but Newbie Drone does have high quality batteries. They're laminated cell design, which we oftentimes call flat packs. But these are designed for higher performance. And one of the things that I was interested in was to test it on this little quad. Now, what I've done is I have taken two connectors. We've got the NX69 connector and the classic PH20 connector, and I have them both soldered onto the board. And one of my curiosities was, could we see any difference in performance between the two? I don't have any fresh PH20 batteries I can really test. So what I did, because these are fresh, was I ran these batteries on both connectors, hoping that we can see some sort of measurable difference. One of the things I was looking for was that voltage sag. On PH20 with PH20 batteries, we oftentimes see a lot of voltage sag when we arm and when we take off. So that was one of the things I wanted to look at. So I lined both of these up with the arming. Of course, I didn't necessarily take off at exactly the same time, but in order to line things up. And yes, in my next segment, I did a better job with the OSD and moving those up so we can clearly see the numbers. They kind of got obscured there in my DVR recording, the last pixel or two, rows of pixel. But I just do, even though these are based on high performance batteries, I wanted to see if there was a flight time difference. Something that I was just curious, curious like a cat, wondering, what benefit can I show with these batteries, or what can I not show? And I can just scratch that curious itch. But let's go ahead and fast forward here closer towards the end. As we get near the end of the flight, unfortunately, I'll kind of spoil it for you. I didn't see a big measurable difference in the takeoff voltage sag as well as the overall flight time. I did this across 6 different batteries. So not just, 1 or 2 battery packs. I did it across 6 batteries. I ran 3 on the PH20 and 3 on the NX69, and just kind of picked the 2 that kind of lined up closest as far as ending voltage goes. I didn't do a great job. You can see there with the NX69, I ended my voltage at 335, 334, but it was higher on the PH20. But let's do punch outs next. I caught a really nice day, almost no winds, although the weather measurement said 4-mile-an-hour winds, but pretty much none. But what I did in this is I lined up when I went to 100% throttle. As hard as that was to see, I had to blow it up super big in order for my old eyes to see it. I just lined up these punch outs when I hit 100% throttle to where both DVR footages would line up so that we could take a closer look. Of course, you might want to use the YouTube controls in order to be able to slow this down and look at it maybe even frame by frame to see if you see any difference. But again, I'll spoil it. Didn't see a huge difference. Of course, on the quad, we have a lightly used PH20 connector. So on the quad, we have a lightly used PH20 connector. Since the review, this has not been a quad that I have been flying regularly. So I've probably got 30, maybe 45 or 50 max sort of battery connections on the PH20. Of course, the NX69 connector is very fresh. So, and again, I don't have good fresh PH20 batteries that I can rely on as far as, trying to measure that difference in some sort of FPV sort of way. But what I can say, those that come into the hobby with a newbie drone quad, they shouldn't have to worry about the PH20. And those of us that might be advising people on what to buy, we shouldn't have to worry about the PH20 factor so much. The NX69 batteries, this is a PH20 battery, so I'm just going to kind of proof of concept this live here on. So that lights up just fine. But of course, you can't plug this into the NX69 connector. The holes on this side, on the PH2 side, just aren't big enough. So we've got half compatibility. Of course, the NX69, if I can get this lined up without removing my glasses, okay, on the PH20 connector, of course it works. And it'll work on your chargers as well that are PH20, standard charging. And of course, with the NX69, it's designed for that connector, so it works just fine. So you have kind of 50% compatibility. As far as performance goes, it should hold out better You have more metal, more contact, which, regardless of whether it's a round design or otherwise, I think it's probably the metal on metal contact and the quality of metal that is what we suffered in the previous, iteration of PH125, if some of our old time veterans remember those days, or PH20 when we ran those for the longest times before we started to see larger 1S connections start to come about. I think it's an improvement, especially for people that are new, that join the hobby, specifically with Newbie Drone. Now, on the other side of things, if you're a longtime veteran, you're probably already well established. So you might have a vague interest in this. I don't think it's probably going to, at least from my standpoint, show such a great performance difference that you would want to switch. Maybe someone else is, maybe Mads Tech or Chris Rosser has a way of measuring the throughput across these different batteries, and they can put together charts for us and things like that. They can actually show these things. But just based upon my flight experience, using good, fresh NX69 batteries, I didn't see a big difference in performance, flight time, battery sag. Maybe you saw something that I didn't see, and you could comment down below, and then I can revisit it. But I might be an engineer, but I'm not an electronics engineer, so I didn't want to wade into waters that really I don't belong in. So I'm going to leave that to others to do. But I am happy for those people that will be starting the hobby with Newbie Drone products, which they do make nice products, especially for those people that are starting out the hobby. And they do provide local U.S. support, so bonus there. They shouldn't suffer nearly as much with a lot of that PH20 battery sag that a lot of us spent years suffering with, and having batteries like this with a connector on the end, which, even though the battery's holding up, the connector might not be holding up, and we would have to change out the batteries as well as the pigtails on our quads in order to regain that original PH20 performance. But NX69 batteries from Newbie Drone, I will have a link to their website, or you can just go newbiedrone.com if you want to check them out further, check out some of their materials as far as the measurables on these batteries and the connector itself. It'll be linked again, or you can just use your Google Foo or fingers and head on over there to check that out. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know. Hopefully I can answer them down in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.